On this week's edition of The Race, how the aspirant candidates are campaigning and what they hope they will bring to a party beset by problems and factionalism. Joining us, political economist Lumkile Monde, along with commentators Karima Brown and Richard Poplak. Before we get to the ability to campaign, I want to talk about the other two that we haven't yet. Richard Poplak, Matthews Phosa, one person saying the only reason he is contesting this because he's anti-Zuma. Is that it, or is there anything else that's driving?
Well, looking at the literature and this research documents, it does seem that he's literally the most unpopular candidate on the list by a long shot. So I think that probably rules him out.
Is he hell-bent? Is this just an anti-Zuma crusade, Kareem?
I think it is. Yeah. You know, he's kind of had his Damascus moment, if you like. But of course, he was part of the crew that brought President Zuma in 2007. But I think what is interesting about Matthews is he comes from Mpumalanga. And as you know, that's the province that appears to be united, and everyone is courting. And there is a hope that whoever in the event he doesn't make it, and of course he won't make it, who he sides with, he will bring pockets of support in Mpumalanga.
How much sway does he still have within that region?
I think it's kind of interesting to see what kind of business interests people have, because as you know, the ANC networks inside the parties organize along those business lines. So when you scratch the money, you'll see where the pockets of support lies. And I think where Matthews Phosa has been really active is particularly in Gauteng. He's seen as being part of a crowd that can speak to white Afrikaner business, because he was once the chair of the Afrikaner Handels Institute. And so there is a sense that he is able to speak to other constituencies, and he's a useful guy to kind of have around, you know. He's of course the guy who first defended Julius Malema when he was DC'd by Jacob Zuma. So there's a lot of residual kind of feelings around Matthews in a way that they aren't around other candidates. I think again it's about that horse trading where you're going to see people like them and their role in this race.
Richard, Baleka Mbete finally, she is perceived as paying allegiance to President Zuma in her role as Speaker, and therefore that is going to make her candidacy fairly difficult. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the great disadvantage for her is that she's been on television for some terrible moments in the past 3 or 4 years.
Hasn't she?
You know, the first two Sona fistfights were of course her big moments, and she came out of that terribly. So I would imagine her perception in the public eye is at this point quite low.
All right, so we've heard about the sentiment, both positive and negative, as far as all of these candidates are concerned. Having then, Lumkile, looked at this research, who has their nose out in front? Is it now down to three?
There are three candidates. The first is Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, Nkosazana Zuma, and of course, on number three, Zemkhize. Yeah. So it's those. However, I mean, Cyril Ramaphosa seems to be having a lot of influence, except for the Buffalo that Richard talked about. But I think overall, given the fact that, Jeremy, from the members, when we're speaking to them, that they want tradition, they want the ANC tradition back, they want the values of the ANC back, they want the unifier. So because of that succession that they've seen historically, Cyril Ramaphosa, I think, is being seen as the one who could do that job of unifying.
So Richard Poplak, those in the lead then, that trio that we've referred to, how do they then entrench and sustain going forward, given that we're a matter of weeks now away from this conference?
Well, I think it's speaking and campaigning before delegates at this stage. I mean, I think that's extraordinarily important. It's getting out there in front of people who count, and it's how their campaigns are managed at this point, which is enormously important. I do want to say one thing in Zweli Mkhize's as his camp is concerned. I think there's an enormous opportunity for him to act as the unity candidate, and to sell that very, very hard, and to sneak in the middle. It would by no means be the first time that's happened in politics. And I think in that case, he stands a pretty good chance.
Sir Karima Brown, I'll give you the final word then. If that is to be believed, if he has strength as this unity candidate, what then does he need to do in order to make that happen for himself? It's a very delicate game.
Look, he has to really walk the tightrope, because if he's the unity candidate, he has to prevent the ANC from splitting. But if he wins, he also has that unenviable task of taking the ANC through the election in 2019. And if unity means a lack of clean out, a lack of reform in the ANC, then it's a dead lose in 2019, and it will then have been on his watch. So he is probably in the most difficult, of positions, because he doesn't have a lot of room to maneuver if he wants to keep people together, but he can't not clean out if they are going to get themselves fighting fit and future fit for the ANC to take and to hold on to power in 2019. And that's what any unity candidate faces. His task is the hardest, I think.
Karima Brown, Richard Poplak, Lumkile Monde, thank you very much. And that's how the various contenders then are faring. But there are still several weeks to go, no doubt, many twists and turns. So my thanks to the panelists, and remember, the race is on.